If you like blowing your enemies up, stick around. We're going to go through how to build your mage. Just going to prime you guys. I'm not the kind of person that says always use exactly what I say to use. Instead, I'm going to provide you guys with the tools so that you can create your own build and do whatever you want with it. We have powerful stuff. A lot of this stuff is available. In fact, all of the stuff I have on right now is available in the first zone. I will show you how to get a variety of magic caster gear in the first zone, so you guys will not have to worry about that. And of course, we're going to go through where to spend points and where to spend some skill points, and we'll go through some build ideas so that you guys can have an idea as to what you would like to do, and then you can build towards that as you're going on your adventure. Starting out then, we're going to go into attribute breakdown. Pure mage is pure mage, so that means spirituality only. The only exceptions to this, in my opinion, are if you want to put some points into perception to become more of a one-shot mage, so you can get your crit chance, crit damage up with the perception here. And that's important just to have in the back of your mind when we go through the rest. When we look at the skill points, I was able to 100% go to spirituality until level 30. I'm a good chunk of the way through the second map, so provided you just pay attention to some of the advice I'm going to give you with the skill tree, you shouldn't even need to deviate from this at all. Go ham on the spirituality. It's not even for the spell power damage, it's the mana capacity and the mana regen that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck here. My final points that I'm going to use here from my 30 are actually going to go into practicality. This is mostly for the price of the sold goods. Just in case you haven't noticed, whenever you look at the price of something, you only get 10% of it because of the price of goods. So we can upgrade this, and the first few points have the biggest impact. It's so much better. And when there's houses costing 50k, yeah, you're going to want to be able to make some money. So I do recommend, once you're comfortable in a zone, consider putting some points into practicality just to make the economy better. It's also going to give you the weak spot damage. So if you hit something in the head, your spell's going to do extra damage, and because that's a separate multiplier, that's actually a lot of extra damage. Something worth bearing in mind is just make sure you take some practicality. That's going to come up again in the skill tree, which we're moving on to now. We're going to start out in spirituality. It's going to go a little bit all over the place because there are skills in other trees that we want depending on your goals. The most obvious thing should be we have combat, which gives us damage, and general buffs, which gives us some other stuff. Now, I'm going to quickly touch on our inventory in a second, because what I recommend, your first 2 points is 10 mana and then power and swiftness. That there is going to get you the most out of your first 2 points, because that one there is 20 mana. Okay, it should be self-explanatory. It's a lot of mana, especially early in the game. And that is going to make it so that your movement speed multiplier applies to spell power. Now, yours won't be as high as mine because you won't have leveled up your armor skill. But let me just show this for a second, okay? So when you're in light mode, your natural movement speed modifier is getting plus 20%. So what that means from a skill point perspective is, even at base, before we get into any modifiers or anything like this, these 2 points here are worth more than putting 2 points here. Okay, that should be obvious. But in addition to that, what you'll find is your speed multiplier is actually higher than the 20% that it shows you. So you can see that mine is actually at 134%. So I'm just getting an additional 34% spell damage plus 20 mana for 2 skill points, which is fairly decent, especially early on in the game. The reason that's so much higher is because as you level up your light armor skill, this increases the bonuses we get for being in light armor. As well as being evasive, we get through the game faster because we can run around. We're also gaining spell damage out of it. In addition to that, it's also worth noting that the Shrine of the Deer over at the end of this rock right here gives you bonus speed. So that is something you can go and do. You just go and hand in, I think, some deer antlers, which if you don't have them, you can purchase from the merchant over here. He sells 3. Hand them in, and then suddenly you have a little bit more spell damage from that same skill point, which is kind of nice. Additionally, you now want to keep in your back pocket, if you start feeling like you're dying a lot, we have access to the invigorating enemy, which is where you're going to get your health from. 10% of your mana is now going to become health modifier, which is why we don't need to put any points into endurance to gain health. We just bang a couple of those in there, 20% more, and then bam, your health is solved. And in addition to that, we also have 2 other things that we can look at for later on in the game. I've actually started putting some into this. We have a health skill right there if we want more from there. And you can actually get even more in healing from practicality. So you come on down to here, and there's another 5% modifier right there. So it takes a long time before we actually need to have attribute points going into health. And because of the way the game works, by the time you're at level 30, you are very likely to have spare skill points going around. So for example, when we go into general here, there's not really that much else that we need to have. I don't care about moving faster while I'm channeling a spell. I don't do that very often. Regenerating more mana per dead body, it just doesn't help in the times when you want it to help. Against lots of smaller mobs, I don't care about mana regen because I'm usually fine. And in a boss, there's no bodies, so we don't care. Mana regen outside of combat, nobody cares. When an enemy dies, they leave mana essence. Same thing as the last one. Receiving damage creates a mana feat. This one's actually quite cool, just not interested. As you can see, we've pretty much finished already in general. The only thing that's interesting for summoners specifically is this one on the end. You gain more spell damage for being below 30% mana. The reason this is good for summoners is because if you're going to use a summon, you can lock your mana below the 30%, and then you can effectively be going around with 50% damage. But you're going to need a huge mana pool to be able to use good spells if you're going to do this. So I wouldn't recommend doing this early. In fact, I find summons to be a later game thing. Moving on to combat then. It should be pretty obvious. We're going to go ahead. We're going to smash all of those in there. We're going to look at all this other stuff, and there's lots of contextual ways to get more damage. You guys can take this stuff if it applies to you. The one that I think is the most obvious is applying more status buildup. I'm going to get into why I like this in a second. But get that on there because you want the status buildup to be happening a lot. From there, to get better damage, we're actually going to come across to Practicality. We're going to go into statuses, and we actually get a separate multiplier here. Exploitation of afflictions means that when we have an affliction on an enemy, so if we have bleed, for example, from blood transfusion, they are now taking 30% more total damage. The reason this is big is because that is a separate multiplier. So think about this, right? If we take 100 damage and we run this through, if we just added 30% spell damage, right, that's going to get added to the spell power, which is actually 10% of our total spell power right now. Whereas the 30% is 30% of our total damage. So that's 30% of your spell power, including if you get a crit. So it's going to be 30% on top of that, and including if you're doing stealth damage as well. So making them take 30% more damage for having a status on is massive. This actually makes one of the very starting spells extremely powerful because blood transfusion is the only spell that I've seen that auto applies a status. We're going to be doing this a lot in battle, and as soon as a bleed gets on, it's taking 30% more damage when you hit it with a real spell. That's your primer, that's your killer. So whilst you can probably kill most enemies in one shot, if something's a bit tougher or it's a boss, you stick that on there and then you're going to kill it in maybe 2 or 3 shots. And because status is so important to the mage, let's have a look at the rest of this. So we can make sure that our status actually does even more damage. Very nice, especially with the burn affliction, so I really like this a lot. I very much view the stacking peril as a tax stat. So what I mean by that is we're only putting 1 point in there because we have to, because we want to get to, if an enemy has negative status, it's faster to apply another one. Again, this is exactly the same as what we we're just talking about. So now when we have the blood spell going out, put in bleed on there, it's now 50% faster to apply a fire proc or a freeze proc or whatever other status that you're enjoying with status. It's so big, you can't ignore it. And in my opinion, that should be your initial stat setup. So you can see, even though I'm level 33, I've got 14 points left. So that's probably like level 19, maybe at the most. And you'll build pretty much online. You really, like, gear will barely matter to you because you're getting all of these damage percentages added on. And we've got them in a multiplicative way so that we can just keep on pumping the damage in there. So from there then, it's up to you what you want to do. So in terms of ramping up damage, I think I'm on the side of crits. Stealth is too contextual, and I've been in some pretty tough boss fights, in particular in the second map, where, you know, stealth isn't helping you in a boss fight, right? It's good for exploration, very nice and useful early on, but I think crit is the way to go. That means that we need to talk about alternating spells here, because we are able to take these two, and basically if you're using 2 separate spells together, so think about what we're doing a second ago. So when you use the big spell, we're making it so that the small spell can crit, and when you use the blood transfusion, you're going to make it so that your fireball or lightning, whatever else it is using next to it, is going to gain more damage as well. The thing that I don't know about this is whether or not this is a separate multiplier or whether this is added to the spell damage. Those two, very worth considering if we're going crit, especially as from there, what we're going to probably do is head on over to the perception tab, go into crits, and then we can do things like have it so that if we consecutively hit an enemy, we're going to keep on gaining more and more chance to crit. We can then raise the critical damage, which is a new multiplier, so that's huge. Get the initial crit chance up there as well. We actually don't care about stamina, so that would be a tax stat for us. We don't care about adding bleed because we can already do that so well. And so you'd end up coming out of this one something like this so that we have much higher chances to crit, which is going to be something that's important for us. If you do happen to have spare points lying around because you know you're not spending it on health, you're not too bothered about damage, you're feeling comfortable out in the world, don't sleep on crafting and trading. This is a good place where you can get yourself some more profitability without having to spend your stat points. That way, if you wanted to, you could pretty much just keep on going pure spirituality and not really have to worry too much about the sell price. But what I like about this is if you put this in, that means you only need like 5 or 6 points in your stats, and then you are selling goods at a much nicer rate. And then you're able to get down to some of the more important stuff, because later on you are probably going to want to be able to reduce the weight of items that you craft. We've already talked about equipping, how important that is. So when it comes to being able to wear this stuff, then that is going to be massive. The last two things we need to go over then is armor. Firstly, we don't really need that much here, but because we want to stay in light mode and early on it's difficult to reduce the weight of a lot of items, you're going to want to put 1 point in here. We actually don't care about this additional armor value. What we care about is this. This is going to increase your weight threshold, which allows you to wear more armor, and you can fill most of your slots. In the first zone, I wasn't actually able to wear a cape, but you can fill most of your slots and still remain in light mode by getting your endurance training in there. Lastly, because we're using evasion to avoid damage, you're going to want to pay the tax to get agility and then get an extra dash and have your dashes come back faster. That's going to make so that we can, just stay nimble on our feet, keep the evasion going, and make so that most bosses can't hit us. There are some bosses that have some long attack chains that seem to be meant to be like parried and stuff in melee, and I don't actually mind that being in the game, but being as we are going with pure mage, we don't really want to be in melee, and having an exit option is the way forward. I've also only got 2 King Souls right now, and the only even mildly useful one is the slow time. The second one is we can get damage based on how many enemies we kill. Don't care about that. We can have some damage reduction. We don't really care about any of this. Slowing time is the way to go. We've spoken about stats and skills. Let's look at some gear. Like I said before, I'm not going to tell you exactly what to put in here, but you effectively need to keep it in light. So it can feel a bit bad. You saw I had to take my gloves off earlier to stay in light, but we're okay now that we have raised that cap a little bit. But it does mean that, for example, I can't wear a cape. Okay, cool as that is, and as awesome as those stats are with some extra perception on, I cannot wear that. Okay, and most capes weigh 1. I haven't seen any that actually weigh less yet. So if there is anything that's lighter than that, maybe that's going to be an option for us. The biggest priority is stay in light mode so we can keep on getting the spell damage bonus, the 20% spell damage bonus, and the ability to stay out of combat. Additionally, something that I suppose didn't highlight specifically is we're getting 20% more mana regen just out of being in light mode, which just makes magic combat so much more better. Coming over to spells then. People were like rambling on about this Thunder Lash at me like I didn't know what it was. I'm not a fan. I'm sorry. It's not all that. I have a lot of spells. I got like multi-daggers. We got all sorts of summons, and I have tried loads of stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of this just does not end up cutting it in comparison to some of the spells I'm going to show you guys, and I'll show you how to get the ones that I like the most. If there's others that you guys want to use, you guys can feel free to go out and find them. But I even got a poison. Venom doesn't work anywhere near as well, and because I want that instant proc from the bleed, if my small spell isn't as good at applying bleed as that, then it's completely useless. The star of the show technically is blood transfusion, even though it's not as flashy as the other spells. And then I have been having great results out of Scorching Pathway and Scorching Blaze. Now I assume most people know where to get Scorching Blaze, but I'm going to show that one as well. Blood transfusion you get right at the beginning of the game twice, so it should not be difficult for you guys to find. Scorching Blaze is huge fireball, so let me just go ahead and see if we can find something to fire at. It's absolutely hilarious. It makes enemies ragdoll off the bat. And Scorching Pathway is a much nicer generalist spell because it pierces enemies, which means, if you have a group, let's go down to this beach over here where there's a bunch of enemies. Let me gather a load of enemies up for you. So these enemies are even resistant to fire. I know I'm high level, but at least it should show. But this pierces enemies, so we have the charge, which is like massive, and then we have the normal one, just goes through. This makes fighting groups so much easier. I don't see how there's anything that's even going to be any better than that. And then, of course, we have the big one. It's not going to work on this fire guy. All right, so when you shoot stuff with this, it's just great fun. It's just, like I say, it blows them off the map. It's great fun. And just happens to be a happy coincidence that we are already at Sunken Village. To get the Scorching Pathway, it's actually very easy. We come to the northern end, and we're going to head to the Crypt of Seawall up at the top here. There's a couple of zombies out front. Take care of them. Once it's clear heading inside, we can't get in there whilst we're in combat, so you will need to defeat the enemies out front. And then run in, turn to the right, through this cave at the back, and your Scorching Pathway will be in this chest waiting for you. Next up then, we're going to head to the Abandoned Stronghold. There's 2 ways of getting the spells out of this area, because you can either defeat the bandit there, close your ears for 20 seconds if you don't want a spoiler, or you can progress the story. Someone's going to turn up here, and there will no longer be any bandits, so you can get everything here for free by progressing the story. But anyway, as we come in, you'll see that I'm not fighting anything, okay? The Thunder Lash that everybody loves is on this door with a dagger. I'm afraid I've already collected it. Hopefully I've got a picture somewhere. And then we come on up into the rafters here. We're going to get all the way to the top. There's quite a few spells here. There's spells down there, but I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe it's ice, like an ice shotgun thing, ice hail or something like this. But we're going to come on all the way around to the top, and we have this chest up here, which will ordinarily be locked. And this has my favorite fire boom on there. So that's the two main spells that I enjoy using, so you guys are able to use those. There's plenty in the game. I'm not here to show you where every single spell in the world is. So that should have you set for spells. You know where to put your stats and you know where to put your skill points so that you can have a good time. Now, we're going to talk about some armor sets quickly. There are quite a lot that we can collect. I'll show you where the Druid one is just because it's early. I don't really like it. I prefer the Necromancer a couple of bits and then you can get the rest of it nice and easy. But let's go over where we can get ourselves some nice, easy armor sets. They're all fairly simple to get as well. None of them are quest related apart from the Necromancer set, which is a little bit. For the Druid set then, you're going to come to the south of the very first town. So you're coming out the entrance, down, and then you can see we are on this southern breach right here. And I can't remember exactly which one it is. It's one of these little stick huts here, and you've got the chests inside, and that's going to give you the Druid set. I'm pretty sure it wasn't on one of these dead bodies. So unlock these. That's going to get you the Druid set. It's available very, very early, so kind of nice for that reason alone, but it is heavier than the other armor sets, so you're not going to be able to equip much of it. So just bear that in mind as you're collecting it. Robes to the Waning Moon. People were banging on about this to me on the streams, and I cannot stand the fact that that takes 6 endurance. So at level 12, where you could have 12 spirituality, and you can therefore be casting these because these take 12 spirituality, right? You could have at level 12, you could either have superior spells, and what I'm going to suggest, the Spellslinger set, or you can have Robes of the Waning Moon, which is a pain in the ass to collect. Take your pick. I don't think we're going to be going with that, do you? But I will tell you how to get it. Basically, you go to these Druidic shrines, you give it an animal part. Somebody said something about making it more valuable. I didn't know anything about that whatsoever, and I still have the full set. So just go to these, give it an animal part, and collect them as you go around the map, and you'll have the Waning Moon set. The only actual redeeming part of that set is the amulet, which I don't even wear anymore because I've got a new one. But just collect all of the different parts, get the amulet. The amulet's quite good. It's just a weaker version of the one I'm currently using, actually. It's all 10s instead of 15s. So it is useful to get the amulet, so make sure you do visit them and grab that as you're going around. Ultimately, I'm not a fan of this set, and people that want to suggest it to me, and I don't care. Even worse, it's actually heavier than the Spellslinger set. That's terrible. I can't get behind that, not even slightly. With that spoken about, let's go for some other more interesting armor sets. The cool thing is we can actually get 3 in pretty much one zone, so let's go have a look at those. Bear in mind that this northern area is a little bit more difficult, but if you do get yourself to the point where you're 12 to 15 spirituality, so you're doing good damage, you're used to avoiding damage, you're used to stacking that bleed on there and hitting with fire, you should be fine, okay? And we're going to be coming all the way up to this ancient Cromlech one right here. So you can see we were at the bandits before. You follow the road to the north. There's actually going to be a guy here, and he does have a castery set. However, it's quest related, and you'd have to kill him for it. So I don't know how much I suggest going for that, but you can if you want to. You continue to north, and I'm going to pick up from this ancient Cromlech fast travel point right here, and we head straight south. Now I don't have it on me right now. I'm gonna get a picture so I can edit it in. On this priestess right here, there will be a cloak that gives mana regen, so we've got that for you now. And I know it's slightly selfish of me because I started up there, so we're working down. I suppose you could actually get this on the way up. Okay, right in here, this is where the Spellslinger set is. Okay, probably the best early set that you can get. All right, so you're just gonna come in, you're gonna clear these bandits out. Not too difficult. All right. And then you can get the Spellslinger set in this chest. It'll be locked in this chest, so go ahead and grab that out of there. And then to get the battlemage set, we're going to come back to the bridge, and we're going to take a left, right? So we're heading west, and you can see on my map the Tomb of the Good Druid. If you're going to nip off right now, please leave me the hammer emoji, because I know we're getting long into the video. It's much longer than I thought it was going to be. We're going to head on over there. And once you're inside, you're going to need to clear the cave. There are some difficult enemies in here, and if you want to just run past everything, the way to do it is to come off the right-hand side of the bridge. We're going to hit those roofs right there. There'll be a dryad in the middle of here, so this will be dangerous, but you can run into the right hand side here, and the battle mage set will be in this chest, so you can lockpick that out, and once you've got it from in there, you can get back out by doing a 180, run on out, and then you can just get on out of the dungeon this way. So you can do like a speed run, get in there and grab it even at a low level if you wish to, and that should give you well enough different armor sets to play with so that you can put together something that you are enjoying. Somebody is going to say something about wands and cubes, and we've barely spoken about them, and that is because going status and spells is more powerful, I'm afraid. I haven't seen enough wands to know if things like wands have more effect, and wands can restore mana and stuff, can make a big difference, but we can literally set ourselves up to have an advantage for alternating spells, which is what I'm doing anyway, so it's completely unnecessary for me to start worrying about casting implements. If you have a single spell that you think like needs the buff and you really want to use just that one spell, like I don't know, let's say you are enjoying Scorching Pathway so much you don't want to proc anything else with it, you just want something to power up that spell, you could do that 100%. Or maybe you're doing like a stealth build and you want to power up a single spell for like when you're stealthing out, maybe that's good. But I haven't found a use. I've had quite a lot of wands. I've got all sorts of stuff in my storage. I know they exist. Someone's going to complain, and I just don't care about your complaint.